j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
What is, how devastating is this report for Donald Trump and the administration?
You know, if people read it, it is devastating. As you just described, it shows a degree of involvement on the part of the Trump campaign and Donald Trump himself that even the Mueller report did not quite describe, partly because the report is, you know, it's not a criminal report on an investigation the way the Mueller report is. It's actually a little bit more of, you know, it's a almost more journalistic report based on a congressional investigation of counterintelligence risk. And so it can be a little freer than Mueller could. The most important thing about it, however, is not the facts that it contained. It's the names who were on it. It's the fact that this was a bipartisan report by the Senate Intelligence Committee, which actually, unlike the House Intelligence Committee under Devin Nunes, actually did its job, did a full and complete investigation, produced the kind of information that you could write up at 1,000 pages that answers a whole lot of questions and identifies the ones you can't answer. And the fact that it is as devastating as it is particularly clear by the fact that even the authors of it on the Republican side were yesterday busy issuing statements suggesting that it didn't say what in fact it says.
Which was, of course, humiliating for those who tried to do that for political reasons. When, again, they presented mountains of evidence that Donald Trump and his campaign worked with the Russians and were aided and abetted by the Russians, that it was an ongoing aggressive attempt. And instead, they did what idiots, useful idiots for Vladimir Putin have been doing now for several years, and that is clinging to the most lurid tales in the Steele dossier and saying, well, you didn't prove that, so the whole thing is a hoax, acting Claire McCaskill as if that one part of this investigation would somehow distract from the mountains and mountains of damning evidence. And I just have to say it again, from the mountains and mountains of devastating evidence that Donald Trump lied to Robert Mueller, committed perjury under oath, written. I mean, he had time to think through it and still committed that. And then again, that you go through all of these people. Trump's foreign policy advisor lied about contacts with Russia. His national security advisor lied about contacts with Russia. His campaign chairman lied about contacts with Russia. His deputy campaign chairman lied under oath, all of them under oath, about contacts with Russia. His personal lawyer lied about contacts with Russia under oath. His political consultant lied about contacts with Russia under oath. And his attorney general lied before Congress under oath. And of course, and yesterday, Republicans concluded that the president of the United States lied under oath to federal investigators about his campaign's contacts with Russia. Boy, that's some hoax, Claire.
Yeah, I really wish we would refer to this report a different way. I would like to say Tom Cotton says that the Trump campaign manager was working with a Russian agent. Ben Sasse says, of course, the government should have been investigating what was going on in the Trump campaign. John Cornyn says, yes, Carter Page was doing suspicious things that warranted him being looked at by the people in our government because of his activities with Russia. This is a damning report. If it was issued in isolation, without all the other noise that Trump creates with all of his scandal, it would blow the lid off Washington, D.C. But because of when it's being issued and everything that's come before it, my fear is people won't realize that this was Marco Rubio and Tom Cotton and Ben Sasse and John Cornyn saying, yes, the Trump campaign worked with Russia and they should have been investigated.
Yeah, another way to put it, Willie, is that Marco Rubio said that Donald Trump's coordination with Russia, his campaign's coordination with Russia, posed, quote, a grave counterintelligence threat. Another way to say that, it posed a grave threat to American democracy.
It is Wednesday, the 19th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam Gunner. The English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Oh, such a lovely hollandaise sauce, so velvety, so very, very velvety, and I gotta tell you, will someone rid us of these meddlesome COVID deniers, these little pieces of, well, aerosolized droplets of spit? Yeah, they're spreading it, folks. We're getting spikes all over the country. We got to open up everything now. We just gotta. Okay, well, reality does have a way of just smacking people upside the head. Ask the people who were denying St. Helens. Mount St. Helens was an issue until it was. You can bury your head in the sand 3 feet deep, but it doesn't mean that you're going to survive the nuclear winter. Okay? And that could happen. We got to be careful. Well, a lot of people are saying that, AOC is getting dissed, but, Colin Powell's getting more time. Well, actually, I think AOC is going to get a little bit more time. And that's good. Now, I understand why we have all of these Republican endorsements. Even Ted Cruz went on Fox News and said that if you elect Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren might be Attorney General or some function that would be, that's, you know what? Ted, thank you. Yes, that would be great. That would be great. So we're getting all these Republican endorsements, and there's a bit of concern inside certain parts of the party that maybe that's untoward. What about us? What about us? Now, I can understand having Colin Powell. He has to put the icing on the yellow cake from Africa. So that was important. Oh, no, it wasn't important that he was there so much putting the icing on the yellow cake from Africa. It was important that I worked that joke in. It took me a while, but I got there. So I'm patting myself on the back because I'm the only one who will. We're all separated now. No one can pat me on the back. Jeez. Anyway, the reason that we have people from like Bushco, the Bush crime family administration, because, they seem like the Partridge family compared to Trump and his group. Isn't that weird? Not that, this Trump organization crime family has any, efficiency. There might be more like the guys in Donnie Brasco. The idiots that Donnie Brasco was investigating and went undercover for. doesn't make them any less dangerous now. I mean, they may be idiots, which might make them even more dangerous, and that's why organized crime needs to be nipped in the bud. Okay? And Trump proves another dictum that I live by and have always understood, is that every crook thinks they're smarter than the cops. Every single one. And look at Trump. I mean, he admits his crimes in the open every day. Every day. Because he thinks he's going to get away with it. And that's why crooks are stupid. By definition. By definition. So here we have the Trump administration getting caught pretty much stealing the election in 2016. They were caught. And of course, that's the biggest hoax in the world. You can't prove it, and we're going to show that you can't prove it because we're gaslighters. Yeah, sure you are. But you know what? Reality still has a way of smacking you right upside the head. And once again, just ask those people who didn't survive Mount St. Helens because they didn't think it was an issue. And then it was. So we will be getting into more, probably, in the coming days about that bipartisan report from the Senate Intel Committee. It was bipartisan. I like McCaskill's take. Yeah, let's call it, Tom Cotton said that Donald Trump stole the election in 2016, obstructed the investigation, and it looks like he's doing the same thing now. Ben Sasse says. I like that. Ben Sasse says. So that's one way to do it, but the fact remains this idiot was impeached. Everything we joked about him, he's a Russian asset, or at least, a useful idiot, a dupe. And it turns out he's been sending love letters, fan letters. Oh, please, Vlad, I really like you. Come meet with me. For decades. Told ya. Okay, I'm just telling you. Trump didn't marry Ivana because she was such a great skier. Okay, her dad was KGB. Let's be clear. All right? And maybe he's got a handler currently now who doesn't live with him anymore. She's got a bodyguard, though. Spends a lot of time with him. Good for her. I don't care, though. She's still a racist birther biatch. Come on. She gets no, she doesn't get a pass. Please. You know what? I really like this virtual Democratic National Convention. This is one of the best things that I've ever seen. Who thought it possible? You'd see these Star Trek episodes where there'd be like government officials from across the universe. They'd be these ethereal holographic heads or holograms themselves, whole body holograms, and they're filling the arena or the well of whatever legislative body that they have. From across the universe. They're not actually there. They're sending their holographic images to that spot. Well, this is almost the next best thing. Now, that roll call vote of the states, that was, oh man, I'm not the only one. I mean, everybody's extolling how great that was. I loved it. It showed us as being, America, the beautiful calamari. I had to get that one in too. It's so obvious. Versus their American carnage. I mean, come on. You want America the Beautiful with its calamari? Or do you want that? We are America. And I got to say the Toxic Third is too. They're going to be part of our America, and we just got to learn to deal with it as we have been doing for all this time. Let us just not let them have an outsized influence because they're loud and corrosive. That's why they're the Toxic Third. Indeed. So much more going on in the world, and we're trying to touch upon it. Some stories that may have slipped under the radar, as they say. Do people still use radar, or is it something more advanced now? Oh, yes, radar is still part of our technology. I looked at the roster of speakers that they're going to have at the RNC next week, and it looks like they're going to have that brat from Covington that was in that Indigenous elder space. Yeah, he's going to speak. The angry, rich, white gun couple from Missouri, right? Yeah, right outside St. Louis. They're going to speak. And, oh my God, Vladimir Putin's going to give a keynote from the Oval Office. Well, he does have some influence in this party now, doesn't he? What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, despite his nomination being nixed, a former oil industry attorney will continue calling the shots at the Bureau of Land Management in an unusual arrangement he set up months ago. Wow, that's why he's an attorney for big oil. A Trump rule that allows liquified natural gas rail shipments is challenged in court. Well, thank God, they better challenge it somewhere. If they try to challenge it on the rails, that stuff might explode. And the Florida felon voting law, you know, the law that allows felons to vote? Well, that's being questioned by a U.S. appellate court because they don't know what a polling tax is, apparently. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed his close ally and deputy, Chrystia Freeland, as finance minister. And he's promising big stuff to get them out of the pandemic. And I bet you it'll work, too. And floods on the upper Yangtze River forced Chinese authorities to evacuate more than 100,000 people and threatened a 1,200-year-old World Heritage Site. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so, and so much more. To the leftish of the chat room link that happens to be near the bottom of our homepage, which is at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and maybe send us the equivalent of what you might spend on a espresso-type coffee drink when you could do that with impunity, if you're able to do so, we are able to take those recurring pledges and pay our bills, because that's what you do. And when you do that, they often let you get away with quite a bit in this free society that we're trying to protect and resist from being destroyed. We will not allow that because, well, we're Americans and we like the way things are when we get along versus when we don't. Alrighty. So, thank you to those who have been doing so for quite a while. You know, we've been doing 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio for almost 10 years. Through surgeries and deaths in family and all sorts of things, and Netroots Radio continues to broadcast on. Because this is our civic duty and we will be fulfilling it. And we have been because of your generosity, and we thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And a lot more, too. In fact, our homepage will be upgraded with some pretty cool stuff. And we're doing a bit of a, shall we say, a social media campaign to set the record straight, get out the vote, and kick out the fascists that are, I don't know, disrupting our body politic. We don't want it. We really don't. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime and get that out on social media. Oh, I failed to mention to thank Tom for all that he does, and he does a lot in the background, and so does Kelly, so we thank them very much. Hey, if you want to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All righty. Let's jump into this first offering here out of the Associated Press. And we happen to be in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy because that's where we start. I know the chef's table with the amuse-bouche usually comes before, but hey, you get your salad at the end of the meal in Europe. All right, not before. It doesn't make any sense before. Think about it. You'll see what I mean. Feel it, too. This first offering out of the Associated Press is by Matthew Brown. A former oil industry attorney will continue calling the shots for a government agency that oversees nearly 250 million public acres in the U.S. West, despite the White House saying over the weekend that Trump would withdraw the nomination of William Perry Pendley. Pendley's continued reign at the Interior Department's Bureau of Land Management comes under an unusual arrangement that Pendley himself set up months ago because he's a lawyer. And that was according to a document obtained by the Associated Press. Oh, do go on. In May, as a temporary authorization for him to lead the agency was about to expire, Pendley signed an order that made his own position, Deputy Director of Policy and Programs, the Bureau's default leadership post while the director's slot is vacant, the documents show. Oh, you mean he didn't run this by Donnie first? Donnie said, well, we're just withdrawing that guy's nomination. And now he's entrenched himself because Donnie's an idiot? Sounds like it. Details of the succession plan prompted Democrats yesterday, Tuesday, to renew their calls for Pendley's removal. That's baloney. That's not how it works, Senator Sen Tester, a Montana Democrat, said of the May order in an interview. Really? You don't want the Deputy Director of Policy and Programs being able to dictate who's in charge of the Bureau. It's too important an agency. He needs to be removed. Well, this is what happens when you get a lobbyist and oil industry attorney in there. They know how to, pull the levers of power, and he is. Pendley is a longtime industry attorney and property rights advocate from Wyoming. Prior to joining the Trump administration, he had called for the government to sell all, not just a part, but all of its public lands. The Bureau's holdings are sweeping, with nearly 1 out of every 10 acres nationally under its dominion, mostly across the U.S. West. Mark Levy of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A coalition of 6 environmental advocacy groups asked a federal judge yesterday, Tuesday, to block a new Trump administration rule to allow rail shipments of liquified natural gas, a new front in the movement of energy products backed by both the natural gas and rail freight industries. Kaboom! The groups will argue in court that, among other things, the administration did not adequately study the new rule to ensure that the activity it is authorizing is safe for workers, communities, and the environment, said Jordan Lupkman, a lawyer for Earth Justice, no familial relation, by the way, which is representing the groups in court. The rule, they said, would allow shipments of the flammable and odorless liquid known as LNG by rail in tanker cars that are untested and that cannot withstand high-speed impacts. This is a rule that was strengthened by Obama, and so, of course, Trump's not going to look at the science of the issue. He feels it in his gut that he has to get rid of everything the black guy did. Why? Because he's an unrepentant racist. Bigot, too. Under this new rule, it's only a matter of time before we see an explosion in a major population center, said Emily Jeffers, an attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity. The U.S. Pipeline and Hazardous Material Safety Administration declined comment because if anybody runs counter to what Trump says, and they never know what that might be, they're going to be in big trouble. The agency published the rule late last month in the Federal Register, and it takes effect in coming days because they're sneaky bastards. The rule comes amid foundering prices for natural gas in the U.S., as court and regulatory battles over pipeline projects have slowed movement of the nation's world-leading gas production to markets. That's what they'd like you to believe. The country's natural gas boom has fueled massive growth in LNG exports, growing last year by more than 65 times the amount exported in 2015. So let's take out the last bits of stuff really holding up the crust of the earth, let it collapse, and see how we can sell that rubble as, I don't know, building material. The rule requires enhancements, including a thicker outer tank made of steel with a greater puncture resistance. Why would anybody want that? To the approved tank car design that for decades has been approved for shipments of other flammable cryogenic materials, such as liquid ethylene and liquid ethane. But liquefied natural gas, let's just let that stuff explode. Previously, federal hazardous material regulations allowed shipments of LNG by truck, but not by rail, except with a special permit. 15 states also objected to the rule during the comment period. Those states included Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where the Trump administration issued a special permit in December to ship LNG by rail from northern Pennsylvania's Marcellus Shale natural gas field to a yet-to-be-built storage terminal at a former explosives plant in New Jersey. Of course, they, with a capital T, always insist that we have to be energy independent, that we have to be able to use our own resources for us. Yeah, well, you know what? 99.99999% of liquid natural gas production doesn't go to us. It goes overseas because we're making money off of it on the spot market. So don't tell me that natural gas is being kept from storage areas. They're taking them to storage areas that aren't even built yet. Spencer, also of the AP, brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An attorney representing the state of Florida told a federal appeals court the state can legally require felons to fully pay all fines, fees, and restitution before allowing them to vote, while attorneys representing some felons argue that constitutes an illegal poll tax and discriminates against the poor. The 10 judges of the U.S. 11th Circuit Court of Appeals hearing Florida's challenge of a lower court ruling on the state's Amendment 4 appeared divided and uncertain about the case, peppering attorneys for both sides with questions about the monetary requirement. Well, why not just have them guess how many marbles are in a jar? Have them do that. The amendment, adopted overwhelmingly by voters in 2018, because apparently in a democracy, a representative democracy, voting doesn't count anymore, does it? It is always up for legal challenge. And that lifted a lifelong voting ban on approximately 1.5 million felons, saying they regain the right once they complete their sentence, because no one should have to carry a scarlet letter on them for the rest of their lives. They paid their debt to society, and they're supposed to be allowed to become a part of society again. Supposed to. The felons' attorneys argue the sentence ends when they complete their incarceration and probation. The state argues felons also have to pay all money owed or get a waiver from a judge. Attorney Nancy Ghana Abadou, representing the felons, told the Atlanta-based court that Florida's position is unconstitutionally discriminates against those poor who are genuinely unable to pay. Because when you're in jail, you don't really get to have a lot to put on your resume now, do you? And when they charge you $20 an hour for a little phone card, that adds up. We are asking this court to uphold a foundational principle that when it comes to voting, the size of a person's pocketbook alone should never determine access to the ballot box, she told the judges who were meeting online because of the pandemic. Attorney Charles Cooper, representing Florida, argued the amendment as presented to the voters specifically said the right to vote would only be restored when all portions of the sentence are complete. He said fines and other monetary damages are not a tax because they are imposed as criminal punishment. The voters decided that the right to vote of a person who lost it as a consequence of his conviction of a felony should only be restored if he has paid the full debt he owes to society. And we say the full debt, we mean the full debt. I added on all that extra, but he said full debt. U.S. District Court Judge Robert Hinkle ruled against the state in May, saying that imposing a monetary requirement on felons who are too poor to pay violated the U.S. Constitution's 24th Amendment, and that's a prohibition on poll taxes. Well, heaven forbid. He also said requiring any felon to pay court costs that are imposed separately from a fine as a requirement to vote is also a poll tax. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis appealed Hinkle's ruling, which will likely put it on hold beyond the November presidential election. How convenient. In the nation's largest swing state, so that means none of them get to vote. Even if the 11th Circuit rules before the state's October 3rd voter registration deadline, its decision will likely be temporarily set aside as the loser seeks to have the case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Seasons Past. That's the non-accidental title of a first-time novel written by our protagonist Kate Conklin in the new movie I Used to Go Here. Kate is 35 years old. Most of her friends are pregnant, while her fiancé has just dumped her. Her baby is the aforementioned book, to which we are introduced during a phone call from her publisher that we hear as she walks through the streets of Chicago. That's not going too well either. Sales are low and her book tour's been canceled. Kate, Community's Jillian Jacobs, is seeing her life come apart, just as her old writing professor and former crush from college, David, played by Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords, calls to invite her back to campus for a reading and Q&A. Needing the ego boost, she's there, picked up by a student guide and driver who's just the first in an array of wonderfully eccentric supporting characters. Most of these are students now inhabiting her old digs who initially point out to her that they were in kindergarten when she lived there. They accept her as a real writer, but are just as accepting when she regresses into one of them, even becoming involved in a plot to expose a professor, no less than her benefactor Dave, as the horn dog that he apparently is. The details in this one feel right, and it turns out the film is at least somewhat autobiographical, as director Chris Ray, formerly Chris Swanberg, hails from Chicago, has done the breakup thing and attended SIU in Carbondale, Illinois, where the film is set. I Used to Go Here occupies the same space as some Apatow pictures, but with enough nuance and subtlety for issues of maturity, self-acceptance, and sincerity to shine through to nicely darken this low-key comedy. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Kwan. That's a bird called the hermit warbler. It breeds along the U.S. West Coast.
They all kind of look the same. They have a cute little yellow head and a gray body.
Brett Furness, a biostatistician at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Typically, birds sing the same one song within one region, because the song attracts mates, and different regions can have slightly different dialects of the song.
But what we also noticed that there are some places that were exceptions to this rule, that some places there was more than one song in the same place. And so we were curious why that would be the case.
To investigate, Furness and his team recorded hermit warbler songs, lots of them.
We had to go all over California. So we went to 100 different locations throughout the state and all the different potential habitats of this species.
The researchers analyzed all the hermit warbler songs they collected and discovered that the hermit warbler doesn't just violate the usual one song per region rule. They positively demolish it.
Doing this over a period of 10 years, we found actually an amazing 35 different dialects across the state.
Here are just two examples of dialects. Slow down for easier comparison. But why would the bird repeatedly alter its song when any changes could affect its ability to attract the mate? The answer is wildfire.
And basically, the idea is that hermit warblers are very sensitive to fire in the short term, and so they will abandon an area temporarily, even if it's just an understory or a low-severity fire that doesn't destroy the whole stand. And so this creates a vacuum, and then other hermit warblers singing rival dialects move into this vacuum, and then you end up maybe a few years later with two or more different dialects in the same place.
The study was published in the journal The Auk, Ornithological Advances. Even though the California hermit warblers sing multiple songs, Furness says that such musical diversity might actually work in the hermit warbler's favor.
They may have greater resiliency to things like that are stressors to our natural habitats like climate change. And so understanding that helps us to make better conservation decisions to protect biodiversity, but it's also what makes the outdoors interesting and a beautiful place to be, because you can go to one part of the state and hear hermit warblers singing a certain way, and you can go to another part of the state and they sing a different way. And even though you might not know it's a hermit warbler, your experience outdoors is enriched by that diversity.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Kwan.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Dr. Joe Brazee is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. He's joining us today to discuss the importance of getting the flu vaccine. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with how long does the flu season last?
In general, flu seasons will last for several months in the United States at the national level. Each year it begins in the fall, usually peaks between January and March, and ends in the spring. But the timing of flu season is unpredictable, especially at the local level. So because we can't tell for sure when it will start, when it will peak, and when it will end in every community, we want to make sure that people get vaccinated as early as possible when the flu vaccines become available in the late summer and early fall.
Well, who should get vaccinated?
Everyone 6 months of age and older should get vaccinated against the flu each and every year. This is especially important for people at high risk of complications or severe flu if they get infected.
Which groups are at higher risk for complications from the flu?
Well, some people are at especially higher risk for severe flu or complications. These are people who are very young, like kids under 5 years of age, anybody 65 years and older, and people with underlying health disorders like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, or diseases of the immune system, and pregnant women.
Joe, how effective is the vaccine for preventing flu?
Well, vaccine is the single best way to protect you and your family from the flu each year. Most years, the vaccine reduces a person's chance of getting the flu and complications from the flu by about 50 to 70%. But how well it works can vary from season to season and by person. So remember that vaccine is one of 3 ways you can protect yourself against the flu. The other ones are good hygiene, like hand washing, covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and finally medications. There are medications that your doctor can prescribe to treat the flu if you get it.
Are there any side effects from getting vaccinated?
Well, there are 2 types of flu vaccines. First, the shots. The most common side effects with the flu shots are soreness or redness in your arm for a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. The nasal spray vaccines can cause runny nose or congestion or low-grade fever in some people for, again, about a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. So these side effects are mild compared with the disease itself, which causes hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. Remember that the vaccine is the safest and most effective way to prevent flu each and every year.
Joe, where can listeners get more information about the flu vaccine?
We'll go to cdc.gov/flu.
Thanks, Joe. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Joe Brazee about the annual flu vaccine. Remember, everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, Show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Every now and then, someone comes along whose work is so productive, honest, and inspirational that they ought not be allowed to die. That's how I felt last month when I heard that John Lewis had slipped away from us. Throughout his exemplary life, this civil rights icon and progressive leader had hurled his heart, soul, and head, literally, into fighting for the voting rights of all Americans. In 1965, he was among the marchers on the front line in Selma, Alabama, with Martin Luther King Jr., who had their heads busted by state troopers for daring to insist that African Americans be allowed to vote. That bloody encounter led to passage of America's historic 1965 Voting Rights Act, which empowered grassroots organizers to usher in a remarkable era of political progress. Black voter registration jumped nearly 70% the next year, and black citizens began getting elected, including Lewis, who later won a Georgia congressional seat. The importance of Lewis, though, was that he didn't just sit in that seat. He put it to use daily, battling what I call the 6 Bs, bosses, bankers, billionaires, big shots, bastards, and BSers, who keep trying to knock down the middle class, hold down the poor, and tear down people's democratic rights. Most significantly, he inspired ordinary people to recognize their own strength and common interest, rallying us to unify and organize around the values of fairness and respect for human dignity. This is Jim Hightower saying his lasting message was simple, direct, and true. Democracy is not a state, he said. It is an act. If we the people are to control our own destiny, we have to stand together against the moneyed and political elites who keep imposing their plutocratic control over us. We have to be willing, as John Lewis put it, to get into good trouble, necessary trouble.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Donald Trump's claims that Kamala Harris is ineligible to run for vice president or president because her parents were immigrants is false, racist, and dangerous. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. False because the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, in relevant part, unambiguously provides that all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Kamala Harris was born in 1964 in California and therefore is a natural-born citizen of the United States. The daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants who had achieved their doctorates the previous year from the University of California, Berkeley, and were working as academics at the time of her birth. The immigration status of her parents, which conform to all laws, by the way, doesn't matter a whit. Racist because this is the 2020 version of Donald Trump's repeated birthism claims that President Obama was not a United States citizen. And dangerous because Trump's debunked theory has spread like wildfire across social media, even though, as Harvard Law School constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe puts it, the theory about Kamala Harris not being eligible to be vice president or president is idiotic and total BS. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1997. That was the day that a strike by the Teamsters Union against UPS ended with a victory for the union. The strike had started 15 days earlier. More than 180,000 UPS workers participated in the action. It was the first nationwide strike by UPS workers. At the time, UPS delivered 80% of all packages in the United States. The company, known for its signature brown trucks, delivered 12 million packages a day. The key issue of the strike was that the company increasingly relied on part-time workers. The insecurities of part-time work were growing, not just at UPS, but for workers in industries all across the country. The strike settlement came with the union winning its core issues. The company agreed to convert 10,000 part-time jobs to full-time positions over the course of the next 5 years. The victory was significant for the U.S. labor movement. The 1980s and 1990s saw new attacks on labor unions and working people, starting with President Ronald Reagan's breaking of the air traffic controller union strike in 1981. The UPS victory in a national strike with broad rank-and-file support encouraged working people beyond the Teamsters Union. Announcing the settlement of the strike, ABC News anchor Peter Jennings declared, quote, "It's been the most dramatic confrontation between industry and organized labor in 2 decades. Teamsters President Ron Carey said, quote, "It's what this country needs. Decent jobs, a chance for the dream, a chance to purchase a home, a chance to bring your children up properly, a chance to send them to college. Enough is enough, and it's about time that people start fighting back on this." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 65 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs to be much cooler than yesterday and the days previous, expecting only a high in the mid-90s. Always getting cold. Lows in the low 60s overnight. Abundant sunshine today with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. Decreasing tonight around 5 to 10 out of... staying the same velocity tonight, but out of the northwest at 5 to 10. Mainly sunny skies tomorrow with highs around only 90. Oh, a cooling trend. We need it. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County here in the southern part of Oregon have now jumped to 594, with 2 confirmed dead. Obvious undercounts, but that's the way it goes. Grass pollen is rated low right here outside the mothership's window. The air quality index in the region is now in the good range at 34 parts per million. It had been moderate, and it was smoky, but not now. The daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.02 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 72%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 66 with rain. Paris is 80 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 90 and sunny. Kyiv is 88 degrees and fair. Kabul is 82 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 78 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 82 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, though, is 56 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California, is 61 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York, is 68 degrees Fahrenheit with heavy rain. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Scherer and David Lundgren of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed his close ally and Deputy Chrystia Freeland as Finance Minister yesterday, Tuesday, and promised bold new solutions to help Canada recover from the pandemic. Freeland, age 52, a former journalist and foreign minister, becomes the country's first female finance minister, replacing Bill Morneau, who resigned on Monday amid friction with Trudeau. Freeland, who is considered Trudeau's most likely successor as Liberal Party leader, spearheaded negotiations of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Pact in 2017 and 2018 as Canada's Foreign Minister.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Floods on the upper reaches of China's Yangtze River forced authorities to evacuate more than 100,000 people yesterday, Tuesday, and threatened a 1,200-year-old World Heritage Site. Staff, police, and volunteers used sandbags to try to protect the 233-foot Leshem Giant Buddha, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in southwestern Sichuan province, as muddy floodwaters rose over its toes for the first time since 1949. Sichuan, through which the Yangtze River flows, raised its emergency response to the maximum level to cope with a new round of torrential rainfall. The Yangtze Water Resources Commission, the government body that oversees the river, declared a red alert late on Tuesday, saying water at some monitoring stations was expected to exceed guaranteed flood protection levels by over 5 meters. The Three Gorges Project, a massive hydroelectric facility designed in part to tame floods on the Yangtze, is expected to see water inflows rise to 74,000 cubic meters per second today, the highest since it was built. The project restricts the amount of water flowing downstream by storing it in its reservoir, which has been over 10 meters higher than its official warning level for more than a month. Authorities have been at pains to show the cascade of giant dams and reservoirs built along the Yangtze's upper reaches have shielded the region from the worst of the floods this year, though critics say that might be making things worse. We will be following this story as it develops. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and DNC. That's right. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre, Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.